Alright, hello everyone, this is the Mgtow Cowboy. Mgtow Cowboy coming at you one more again. Today I wanted to make a video concerning a topic I wanted to talk about, and that topic is how Mgtow men, or red pill minded individuals, should behave or comport themselves when out in public. I believe that we're moving towards a society where increasingly people might try to persecute you. And I'm going to talk about ways that they can do that. We have this like cancel culture, this growing cancel culture where people will try to suppress other people who have dissenting views. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to talk about some common sense strategies you can take to minimize running into problems like that. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about how Mgtow can fight back and how eventually we can win this culture war that we're in. So anyway, to get started, and I don't know what I'm going to call this video yet. It's going to be something like how to behave properly, how to comport yourself properly in public, or something like that. Okay, so once a person decides to go Mgtow or red pill, there are special considerations that must be made when dealing with the general public. First off, it must be assumed that the vast majority of people that you encounter are still asleep. Okay, so I'm talking about your dealings with like the common folk, right? The hoi polloi, if you remember, do you guys remember in the movie The Matrix? Do you guys remember in the movie The Matrix where Morpheus takes Neo out into the public as like some sort of like exercise? It was like some sort of simulation, and they're walking down the street, and you see, if I remember correctly, it's the first time you see the woman in the red dress. But you see everyone else. You see like a police officer staring at Neo. You see businessmen, doctors, a plumber, whoever, It's kind of like that. Even though these are people in public that we eventually want to help, it is probably a smart idea to assume that these people, at the very least, are ignorant of our views. And so in a way, if you think about it, it's almost like these people are brainwashed to the point where they are our political adversaries. And until we get this message out, until we provide an alternative narrative for these people to hear and then consider in their own minds, until we build enough tacit approval among people in the population, we should assume that the majority of people are still asleep. All right, that's my first point. The second point I want to make is it should also be assumed that there are other people within the population who actually do have the knowledge that we Mgtows have. However, they oppose us on ideological grounds. Okay, and I think that these people represent a rather small cadre, but they're organized and they're powerful. And when I think of these people, I think of like politicians, I think of government bureaucrats, I think of like a lot of people in the academic sphere. So think of like politicians like, a city council member, a mayor, all these mayors of all these like mid-size and large cities, congressmen, of course, senators. These people, they know the deal, but they don't care, right? They are going to do what it takes to get a vote, right? And so the lowest common denominator is basically an uneducated person, and they have to appeal to that person. And so they're going to push gynocentrism. Moving on. Now I want to talk about some of the consequences of being discovered as a Mgtow. There are real-life consequences to being discovered and publicly outed as a Mgtow. First off, your employer may be contacted and pressured to reprimand you. This includes being fired. So we all know that in this world, we have to make money, right? Ultimately, what you need is you need access, you need resources, and you need access to resources. Well, how do you get access to resources, right? You need money. How do you get money? You need a job, right? So if you have a job and someone's trying to get you fired, I mean, that's almost like trying to kill you off, right? Because it takes away your ability to survive in this society. I don't know. Ultimately, I think there should be like a law passed where it's illegal to get someone fired just based on their political beliefs. But increasingly, we're actually going in the opposite direction, where people, these SJWs, they'll gang up on you. 100 people will call your work and say, "Oh, did you know that so-and-so is working for you? Did you know that so-and-so has certain political beliefs that we don't like? You should fire so-and-so." Next thing you know, you're out of a job, right? Next, your social life may be damaged. This is a big one. Due to the current unpopularity of Mgtow / red pill philosophy, your friends and your family are sure to frown upon this philosophy. Not all of them, but I think the majority of them, especially women. And you are likely to be socially excluded. You're likely to be ostracized. You're going to become persona non grata, right? You don't want that. Therefore, Mgtow men should take certain steps to protect their identity when in the public sphere. Okay, so that being said, how should Mgtow men behave themselves so as to fly under the radar when they're in public? Number one, don't tell women at work about your political views, because they're not going to take kindly to them. In fact, as a general rule, don't tell women, as a general rule, don't tell women, period, about what you think, because this is just not going to be popular with women, right? What we're talking about is the idea that women have certain privileges in society that are oppressive towards men, and we seek to end those privileges and bring in gender-neutral laws and a gender-neutral zeitgeist. They're not going to take kindly to that, right? Because, to someone who has experienced privilege, equality to them is going to seem like oppression. So, but I can talk about that at a later time. Moving on now. Don't tell women. Learn how to properly vet people. Learn how to properly screen people. So, you don't particularly know who you can trust. Try to figure out how to read body language. Try to figure out how to read. I remember my dad was a police officer, and he spoke with me many times about the idea that you can properly, there are techniques you can use to figure out, to read someone, to psychoanalyze someone, to vet someone. You want to look at how they dress. Does this person dress conservatively, or does it look like they just came from a hippie concert? If you're talking to a woman, does she have purple hair? Does she have blue hair? Boom, you're talking to, an SJW, right? A rad femme. So learn how to properly vet people. I want to add the idea here that small talk can go a long way. You can have like a 2 or 3 minute conversation with someone, and you can get a real good read on, that person's worldview or their politics. Lastly, do not be flagrant in your support of Mgtow or red pill ideas. Don't wear clothing out in public with, the big Mgtow sigil, the Mgtow sign. When you're online, stay anonymous. When you're online, don't show your face. Now, I know there are exceptions to this. Of course there are. But, that's only if you have, like, FU money, if you're already a leader in I shouldn't say a leader, but if you're already well known in the philosophy or in the community. All right, moving on. Lastly, I want to talk about the idea that Mgtow should be built clandestinely, or first in a clandestine manner, and that eventually Mgtow or red pill type people can come out publicly when there is more support, more of a broad support. Okay, understand that until we build the ranks in our society of Mgtow, and we get more men to support us, tacitly of course, but eventually openly and publicly, we should kind of lie low and not draw too much attention to ourselves. And again, there is an exception. If you're rich, if you're already famous, if you've already made a brand for yourself, think of like, maybe Aaron Clary, even though he's not totally Mgtow. Think of like Terrence Popp. Think, all these guys online. Some of them decide to show their face, but as a general rule, if you're a small fry, if you're an average Joe, don't do it. I recommend don't do it. And then lastly, we should see Mgtow as a long-term strategy. Think of our political adversaries, right? Namely, like the communists, the leftists. You can call them whatever you want. The socialists, the leftists, the feminists, the postmodernists, whatever you want to call them. Okay, they call their strategy the Long March. Remember, they advocated something called the Long March through the institutions, and they openly stated in their writing that they wanted to slowly take over every institution in society, education, and then the courts, everything. And I think we should do the same thing. We should see this as a gradual process. So very quickly, in the final analysis or in conclusion, we Mgtow, we need to be careful. We need to stay low key. There are certain strategies you can adopt to minimize your exposure, and we should see this as a long-term strategy. So you guys have a good rest of your day. All right, bye now.